Now, were you going to high school at the time?
Yeah, I was in school. I think I was in high school. Yeah, I was in high school. I think around that time, something like that. Yeah.
What was high school like for you?
Again, I was young, and I was. I'm not gonna lie. I was more appealing to the streets appealed to me more than school. I was very intelligent, and I was bored in school, and I would play hooky sometime from the high school. I went to several high schools. I went to Francis Lewis. I went to August Martin. I went to Francis Lewis, August Martin. August Martin was called Woodrow Wilson at the time, I think. I think at that time it might have been called that. But I went to those schools and whatnot. But I didn't. I was playing hooky a lot in school back in the days.
Okay. Now, how did you get involved in the street life back then?
Well, I would be again. I mentioned that I had two brothers and a sister. They never got involved in the street life. But as always in most families in South Jamaica, one out of the many or one out of the few, you would be attracted to the streets. And I was attracted to the streets. And I got involved in the street life. Well, after the Clifford Glover incident, I think I became a 5%er then. I know I did. And I started, selling marijuana and stuff like that. And, that was my entry into the street life, selling marijuana at the time.
Oh, okay. That was young. Okay.
Yeah.
What was business like when you started?
Uh, back then in 1973, 74, 75, whatever, it was illegal to sell marijuana. But it was a good business because everybody was smoking. And in my eyesight, it was an innocent business. Nobody got hurt from selling marijuana that I know of. And so I kept doing it for a little while. And of course, it was people say it was a gateway drug. For me, it was a gateway drug. I started selling marijuana, and then I ended up getting into selling other narcotics because of that. So.
Okay, after you got into selling other things, man, I'm sure things probably changed a lot in the streets, man. How did your family feel when you started making a lot of money?
I never told my family about me making. One thing about my parents, they didn't play that. They wasn't with me selling the drugs. They wasn't backing me. They wasn't supportive of anything I did on the street. In fact, I actually was told if I didn't get my grades up and if I would continue to be spending more time in the street than at home, I eventually would have to be somewhere else doing that. So I ended up leaving my parents' house early. They never threw me out, but they let me know what they weren't going to tolerate in their household. And since I knew I couldn't be in the household doing the things I was doing on the street, I chose to go ahead and leave because I got a little brother and I don't want to have him around stuff and things like that. So, and my parents wouldn't let me do that anyway. So I left my house at an early age and was in the streets.
Okay, so like a teenager, that early?
It was early. It was I don't know. I can't remember the age. I'm actually 63, and I can.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
Okay.
It was an early age though. I left at an early age though. Yeah.
Now, the place you're most known for, Baisley Projects.
Right.
What was it like, in the early years, and how did it change when, things got worse?
Well, I was gonna. If we could have a little time after this, I'm gonna take your cameraman around. Maybe he can, look around and see the Baisley as it looks now. But to me, Baisley Projects was a beautiful place. You got the projects, you got the co-op right across the street. My grandparents lived right across the street from there, right? That's where Supreme stayed. Right across the street from the Baisley Projects was my grandparents' house. So whenever I would go from my parents, either when we was on 109 15 Merrick Boulevard and living in an apartment, or when we was living in the house that we bought not too far from the Baisley, we would go to see my grandparents, and that's how I got accustomed to hanging out and being in Baisley Projects. So to me, it was a community, you know what I'm saying? And everybody knew everybody. And everybody was familiar with everybody. and there was a lot of love shown, you know, back in those days. In the projects, to me, it was harmony, it was love, it was a nice place to me. You know, I got to learn, I got to meet a lot of my friends there. I grew up with a lot of people there, and whatnot. So.
Okay, with South Jamaica, Queens being such a rough place to grow up, what do you think was like the first time you had to stand up for yourself?
I remember in elementary school, at PS 116, like I told you, as mentioned earlier, it was a tough school because, you know, it was always fights after school in the yard. You know, we line up in the morning, we line up in I think in the evening, whatever. It was always fights after school, you know, and so you had to defend yourself. And a lot of times, you know, a lot of people had a lot of family members, so you always had, when you fight one person, you end up fighting the person's whole family. So families end up fighting each other, brothers end up fighting each other and stuff like that. And that was the place where you learned how to fight. It was elementary school, right there on the playground.
With Supreme being your uncle and turning out to be such a prominent person in not just Queens, but hip hop also, what was it like growing up with him?
When we grew up, we grew up and were raised like brothers, you know, and, you know, I had older uncles who were in Vietnam. They fought in Vietnam, you know what I mean? And they always schooled us. And to be honest with you, my grandfathers, both of them were in wars before that, right? I forgot which ones, but my family grew up and they sacrificed a lot for the country. Both my grandfathers, like I said, were in wars, previous wars. My older uncles were in Vietnam. One of them got a Purple Heart for bravery in combat. But growing up with Preem, we grew up like brothers, you know what I'm saying? And we always hung out with each other. We was in the projects, we played basketball together in there. You know, we grew up like brothers. So that's how we were raised, you know.
Do you have a favorite memory with you guys back then?
Yeah, I remember one time we went to a family reunion. I think it was in Philadelphia. And, you know, at family reunion, we always have family reunions in our family, always. And I remember one time we took a picture, me, him, and my older brother. We took a picture, and we still had that picture. It's iconic. It was us sitting on a stoop in Philadelphia at my one of my aunt's house, and it's a picture. We had a dog there, and I remember that from the picture, and I remember that we was out there and we used to dance and have fun with our family. I love the family reunion. My favorite memory of being with Supreme was when we all went to family reunions together. When we was kids, we had no worries in the world. When we was at family, the family reunions were the best part of my life back then. You know.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's what's up. Okay, well, at some time you guys get into more serious things. You know, how did the Supreme team get formed?
Supreme team. Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. Preem has always been a person who people galvanize around. So, you know, the team didn't get formed, I think, until 70. I was away, actually. I think I got locked up. And when I came home, the team was actually formed already. Because, you know, we went to 150th Street first. We went to 150th Street. We was selling drugs separately, Preem and I. He was with one crew, I was with another. But then I got locked up. And when I went upstate for 4 years, I came back, and the team was formed within that period of time. So when I came home, the team was already formed, you know.
Okay, well, what was your thoughts? You know, when you know, you get out and Supreme team is formed, and you know.
Well, when I was upstate, Preem and others had the team going, and I would pay attention to what was going on. Of course, I got visits from Preem. He would tell me certain things, and I was studying while I was up there. I was going to college. I was also studying about organizations. I started reading all cases of anybody who got arrested and took down by either the state or the feds. I would read about all the Italian cases, mob cases. I would read about black gangsters from the past. That's what I would do. I would be upstate reading their cases and studying how they got took down. Because in my mind, I said, "What? I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna probably be involved in certain things." So I had to learn how not to get caught and not to get caught up and stuff like that, and how to put your money in certain places and things like that. So, yeah.
What's up? This is Cam Capone. We got more content like this coming soon. So hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in to Cam Capone News.